Have you seen this King Kong game that's been floating around? My first exposure to it was this cutscene that's been shared on Twitter. I'm gonna be entirely honest with you. I love playing good games, and this year has absolutely no shortage of them, but I put aside everything I was doing yesterday to play Skull Island: Rise of Kong after seeing that cutscene. There's something about shockingly bad video games that really pique my interest, and that brief 15-second scene really had it all. A horrifically modeled and textured giant gorilla, camera work straight out of Spider-Man 3, and what appears to be a single JPEG of a dinosaur attacking in place of a real animation. So I paid 37 real American dollars to purchase Skull Island: Rise of Kong on my PlayStation 5 on the eve of the launch of Spider-Man 2, so you didn't have to. I will admit, nearly $40 felt a little steep for a game that I certainly knew was going to be the worst game I've played in a long time, but I didn't do this for me. I did it for you. So after playing about 3 or 4 hours of Skull Island: Rise of Kong, I can definitively say that you should not buy this game, not even as a joke. When I started Rise of Kong, I was hoping that it would be as bad as that initial cutscene I saw consistently throughout, but that's usually not the case with bad games. More often than not, a peak bad moment like that, where everything with the game comes together for a brief, horrific crescendo, goes viral, while the rest of the game is just pretty dull without being that funny. Rise of Kong is essentially the same as your Aliens, Colonial Marines, or Balan Wonderworld. It's momentarily hysterical, but then after the funny cutscene ends, you're just left playing a bad game, and the joke's kind of on you. Skull Island: Rise of Kong starts with some narration about how we're about to hear the tale of Kong and, well, his rise on Skull Island. Riveting, I know. It starts with the prequel chapter where you play as Kong's mom, who goes out looking for baby Kong and his dad. It's just a tutorial where you're introduced to these sloppy combat, terrible visuals, and absolutely frustrating level design. It's the sort of game that has controls from like 2006, an action platformer with a 3-button combo that you're meant to mash to get through the entire game. Eventually you do unlock new combat abilities, but they're pretty much all consistently not worth it to use since they have big wind-up times that leave you open for incoming attacks from enemies that can drain your health surprisingly fast. Part of that comes from the fact that enemies will surround you and attack all at once, meaning it's virtually impossible to get out of any given combat encounter unscathed. You do have a parry. Apparently the devs played Sekiro and were feeling inspired by the headless ape fight, but it's just a shoulder check that you're supposed to use when the enemy is winding up for an attack and a little glint of light appears in their eyes. This hardly ever works properly. It seems like you need to be facing the enemy head on in order to parry them, but because the shoulder check shoots you forward so far, I miss them pretty consistently. Not that parrying is all that helpful because it just stuns an enemy for a second or two, which you can achieve much easier by hitting them with a heavy attack. Listen, let me summarize what I'm trying to say here. The combat is bad, but you knew that. You're seeing this footage. I don't think either of us came to this journey thinking that it would be anything other than that, but the question is it funny? And the answer is no, it isn't. In fact, it's actually pretty frustrating. Like I said, enemies can pretty rapidly drain your health, and if you get swarmed, you can end up stun-locked as each one attacks in turn, and you'll just die without having any way to have prevented it. You do have a block, but there's a decent delay between hitting the button and Kong actually blocking, and you can't block while being actively hit by enemies, so it's totally worthless. To get back to the story, Kong's mom runs around Skull Island in search of Kong and his dad, and she eventually finds them being attacked by a big dinosaur named Gaw. Gaw f***ing kills Daddy Kong with a single tail whip, and then you have a supposed to lose boss fight with it. Once you lose, Gaw kills you, and then Baby Kong runs away. Before he goes, Gaw lets out a roar, and wait a second, that's the dinosaur JPEG from the cutscene that started this whole thing. As it turns out, the image from the cutscene that went viral on Twitter wasn't being used in place of the dinosaur in the scene attacking Kong. It was a 1-second flashback to Kong's most traumatic moment. In fact, there are several times when that image flashes throughout the game, so that's one mystery solved. After that, we see a montage of Kong growing up, and then one day, he gets woken up from hanging out underneath a tree by the distant roar of Gaw, and he just gets up to go find and kill him. Or maybe he's running away. Honestly, it's not super clear. Kong doesn't talk, and the narrator doesn't give us any hints. Once he gets up, you start the first full level, and to be honest, this is the moment when everything really falls apart. Up until this point, the game was just an ugly B game that got by on its truly hysterical cutscenes, but those are about to be few and far between as you discover the real villain of Skull Island: Rise of Kong, the level design. When you open the pause menu, you can see the map of the level, and each one is a twisting maze full of paths that give you no indication of where to go. The map screen says to use your roar to figure out where to go, but it doesn't tell you how to roar, and then when you do figure it out, it doesn't actually do anything. You see these white lines emanating from areas in the distance across the level, but with how winding all the passages are, there's no clear direction on how to get to them or what they even mean or do. I found myself aimlessly wandering around, fighting off the legions of dinosaurs and giant crabs that litter the island. As I said, the combat is just bad, and the game makes you do it every 20 seconds. There is a skill tree that threatens you with more abilities every time you open the menu, but there was nothing on there that would make the game into anything worth spending time on, so I just ran past all the enemies whenever I could. The tough thing is, the game doesn't give you any indication of where to go, so you just wander around in search of something, anything. I mentioned before how ugly this game is, and I think that's clear based on the cutscenes I've shown, but look at what happens to the visuals in combat. Look at what's happening in the environments as you run around. It's like you're playing an oil painting that's slowly melting all around you. It's so disorienting, and when paired with the terrible level design, there's just nothing to this game. Eventually, I made it through the level and beat the first boss, a giant worm that attacks you for no reason before you kill it and move on. You do so little damage to the bosses in this game, it's so pathetic and makes every fight take like 7 full minutes, but I was never able to beat a boss on my first try, so it was like literally a half an hour before I could just move on. I finally called it quits on level 3. I think out of 5, the level design was just way too much for me to deal with. I was so lost, and the third level is completely packed to the brim, full of difficult dinosaur enemies that attack really fast and deal huge damage, so I was dying pretty consistently. But hey, at least Kong does the T-Rex kill from the movie. Iconic. I just couldn't take any more of Skull Island: Rise of Kong. I'm sorry. I meant to beat the entire game and report back to you, but I just couldn't do it. I didn't get to see the cutscene that started this entire adventure, and I have no idea, honestly, how the person who captured it made it that far. It is truly an awful game on all fronts. And I mean, it's kind of funny. The cutscenes do need to be seen in order to be believed, but they're not worth the $40 I paid to get in. The game is published by a company called Game Mill, which already is a bad sign. You don't want your games to be coming from a mill. And honestly, looking at the rest of their other titles, I imagine you'll find similarly offensive design choices in the rest of their work. They did make Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl, which I've heard is actually pretty solid, but other than that, I'm not exactly sure what sort of quality you can expect from Zuzu Pets the Game or Disney, Frozen, Olaf's Quest. I've seen a lot of people comparing Kong to Gollum, which released earlier this year, but at least Skull Island: Rise of Kong didn't have the gall to pay what I imagine is thousands of dollars to have its trailer shoved in front of my eyes during the Game Awards or Opening Night Live or whatever, so I think it's definitely got that over Gollum. If you were wondering, Kong does eventually kill Gaw the dinosaur in an act of brutal revenge on par with the likes of The Last of Us Part 2, which I know because the trophies say as much. I will say that I do appreciate that Gaw and the rest of the dinos in the game have feathers. It's like the devs said, listen, we can make a truly awful game, but I'll be damned if I don't draw the line at making historically inaccurate dinosaurs. So that's Skull Island: Rise of Kong. I don't want you to play it, but I do want to know what you think of all the footage that I just showed in the comments down below. While you're down there, make sure to like this video, subscribe to DualShockers, and click the bell icon to be notified whenever we make more Kong content. Whenever that might be. As I was editing this video, a report came out from The Verge regarding the development of Rise of Kong. According to devs from Iguanabee, the team behind the game, the publisher Game Mill required the studio to churn out Rise of Kong in just a single year and kept many details of the project secret from them. I think when looking at the totality of the game, it's clear that many of its issues come from a lack of time and funding being given to the developers. It's not their fault that they were placed under such strict deadlines, so don't take this video as me ragging on them. They did the best they could with what they were given, and reportedly were crunching since February, which is 100% the fault of the publisher. Anyway, I felt like that additional context was worth adding since I didn't want to come across like I was trashing the devs themselves. Check out the article on The Verge, I think it's worth a read. Bye.